A very good morning to all of you. You're all very welcome to joining us today for this EU Clusters Talk, part of the European Cluster Collaboration Platform on behalf of DG GROW in the European Commission. Now, today we're going to talk about health, one of the most interesting topics that the clusters deals with, asking where does our ecosystem stand? Now, over the last several years, of course, health has come to the forefront of political agendas and the top of people's concerns because of the pandemic. And we have seen a lot of work happening in the clusters, very active in finding solutions to those huge challenges that were posed by the pandemic. So we're going to talk today about HERA, the Health Emergency Response Authority, sometimes called by people the Rapid Reaction Force. But it's not just about reaction, it's also about preparedness. It's about getting those resources in place so that we're in the right position to face future health crises if and when they emerge. So we're going to talk about the current state of the ecosystem and where the opportunities for innovation are looking to the future. So thank you very much for that. I would love for you all to get very much involved. So let me take you on a quick run through the agenda. We'll hear in a moment the latest news, as always, from Nina about what's happening within the platform. And then we have a short video refreshing everyone's memory just about HERA. We'll then have our panel, so a couple of perspectives from the European Commission before going into our panel discussion. Again, as I said, we really want you to be involved in that. As always, then we will have the funding opportunities at the very end of today's event. Now, let me give you a few housekeeping rules. As you can see, there is a chat function. You can use that to get involved in the discussion, but we really do also want to see and hear you today. So as well as using that Q&A function to ask questions or the chat function to comment and share links, we invite you to join the debate. Just raise your hand. The icon is on the bottom of your screen. And then when you're invited, please unmute yourself and activate your camera. Today's session is, of course, being recorded, as always, so that it can be published later. And those who cannot attend today will be able to see it on the European Cluster Collaboration Platform website and the social media challenges, so that be aware that when you're speaking, it will be recorded for posterity, and a lot of other people will hopefully be able to see what we're discussing and get involved, even if they can't be straight with us here today. With that, I'm going to turn to Nina and hand the floor over to you to give us, Nina, the news from the clusters, please.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and good morning to everybody. We would like to share some news with you. Some, of course, related to our topic that we are dealing with today, health. And we would like to let you know that there are some immediate needs in Ukraine regarding health. So if you want to get involved, if you have medical equipment to be donated, critical emergency care equipment, antibiotics, antidotes, antivirals, or medicines for cancer treatments, these are the most priority needs that we currently see in Ukraine. Feel free to reach out to DG ECHO, who's responsible for coordinating the donations, and you can inform yourself on the website on how to do this. Plus, we would like to let you know that if you have any other sorts of medical items that you may like to donate, you can also make those offers, and this will be assessed by DG ECHO and sent to the Ukrainian authorities to see how they can receive those donations. So please don't hesitate to think about whether you can make any donations and reach out to DG ECHO for this. Then we have also the invitation to come to the Cluster Collaboration Lab, which will take place in Lund in Sweden on the 21st and 22nd of March. Registration is open for you in case you would like to work on a project idea that you already have in mind, need some collaboration partners, and would like to mature your project idea and to build the business case for it. Come to Lund in Sweden and work with others on this. We will focus on energy transitions and circular economy and have an open strand for all your ideas that you might bring. This is open for cluster organizations, companies, research organizations, and other actors. And we also have a discussion group open on LinkedIn where you can already present yourself and look for collaboration partners. So please don't hesitate to check this out. You might have already seen it. The EU single market has turned 30, so 2023 marks the anniversary. And there are a lot of events that are going to be organized by the European Commission, a lot of talks, exhibitions, to which you are invited regarding this anniversary. And what you can also do is register your local event. So if you go to the website, the colleagues will share in the chat, you can there register your local events and initiatives to make them part of the anniversary. Since the 2nd of February, you can also register for marketplace and matchmaking event on the pharmaceuticals between the EU and Latin America and the Caribbean, which also includes a high-level forum that will take place on the 21st of March. And this is an online matchmaking that is open to entities related to the pharmaceutical manufacturing from the two counterparts, Latin America and the Caribbean and the EEA. You can register for this until the 24th of February on the platform B2Match and reach out to new partners to do business in this area. And last but not least, we would also like to inform you that the ECCP Top Policy Toolkit was updated. So there you find a lot of good examples of how policymakers and clusters work together to strengthen the role of the clusters in the green and digital transition, as well as faster resilience. So there are 248 good examples right now from over 60 countries. So please don't hesitate to check it out and to see, get inspired and to read about the examples. And with this, back to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Nina. Lots to think about there, matchmaking, birthday celebrations, lots of positive things. And we've shared those details in the chat if you're looking for the links to collect those. Now, to come back to today's topic, just to refresh our memories, we're going to hear a short video now telling us and reminding us about HERA.
HERA, past, present and future. At the start of 2020, healthcare systems across Europe were dealing with the usual stresses and strains. And then the COVID pandemic struck. As the outbreak tore through communities, countries mobilized to protect their citizens and struggled to get ready for what they could see was coming. The human desire to help each other shone through. From neighboring countries stepping in to treat patients when systems got overwhelmed, to neighbors taking care of each other. At every level, people tried to save lives and keep each other safe. But with all the will in the world, the challenges were enormous. There were no vaccines or other effective medicines. We faced shortages of personal protection and limited testing capacity. Everyone saw that the only way to overcome this situation was to act collectively. The EU institutions were best placed to work with the member states and, where needed, on their behalf. HERA was set up in September 2021 to make that possible. A unified response across the EU has brought researchers, manufacturers, decision makers, and healthcare providers together. In 2021, we hit the ground running, responding to the ongoing crisis. But anticipation is key to tackling future risks. So HERA gathers intelligence, identifies threats, and ensures innovators and manufacturers are ready to respond, to ultimately deliver medical countermeasures which save lives. It's already working. 3 main health threats have been identified, data is being collected, COVID-19 vaccines are being delivered. The invasion of Ukraine interrupted the provision of medical care. In March 2022, HERA connected pharma and ministries of health to secure essential medical supplies. June 2022 saw HERA stepping up to the challenge of Mpox, securing more than 300,000 vaccines, enough for Europe, Norway and Liechtenstein. In October 2022, HERA set up a dynamic purchasing system that will make buying protective equipment more agile. HERA is anticipating what the future could throw at us. But what about the future of HERA? Should it be small and tightly focused, or bigger and wider ranging to be more effective? What do you think? Join the debate.
Well, an insightful recap there into the short lifespan that we've seen so far from beginning to end and looking to the future. As I said, we have two excellent speakers joining us today from the European Commission. So first, I'm going to hand over the floor now to Elodie Durand, Policy Officer and Medical Countermeasures at HERA. So Elodie, thank you very much. Give us your perspective. Tell us what we need to be thinking about and why it's important that we're talking about this today.
Thanks, Jennifer. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well? Yeah, I guess so. Thank you. So I'm Elodie Durand, and I'm a policy officer indeed in the medical countermeasures units in HERA. So I'm going to try and cover a bit more where we are now and what we're doing. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So I think you've seen in the video, as you know, HERA was set up in 2021. And you've seen a number of the achievements we've made in the last years. I think the main things that most people are very aware of are the vaccines for COVID-19, but also our monkeypox efforts last year when that crisis hit. I think what I just wanted to highlight here, so HERA, as Jennifer also mentioned earlier, has the response role, but also very much a preparedness role. And we cover medical countermeasures through the whole value chain. So from intelligence gathering and analysis all the way to distribution and stockpiling. And I think another important point to flag is that HERA covers a very broad range of medical countermeasures. So from vaccines to therapeutics, but also other sorts such as PPE or, solvents and so on. And we also look at both medicines and therapeutics that are authorized on the EU markets, but also new ones. If we can go please to the next slide. So HERA absolutely doesn't operate in isolation. We're part of a very big network, and we work very closely, of course, with other EU institutions. But we also work with lots of agencies, whether at EU level or internationally, and with other actors. And we have some dedicated forums as well for very important stakeholders for us, such as Civil Society Forum, but also industry. And I do hope that everyone on the call today is aware of our Joint Industrial Cooperation Forum, of which the EU Clusters Alliance is a member. So this is a very important forum for us to interact with industry, to share what we're doing and to get some feedback. If we can go to the next slide, please. So I'm not going to read through this. I just wanted to have it here as the slides, I understand, will be published so people can read in their time. But in preparedness mode, so we have a number of roles which are basically supporting, identifying the threats, as was said in the video, all the way to developing, to making sure capacity is there and medical countermeasures are available in times of crisis. So next slide, please. So key role is obviously in crisis, where we will then activate, our mandate will be activated if a public health emergency is declared. And we'll have a role there, obviously, of making medical countermeasures available. And I think a big important element will be the setting up of the Health Crisis Board, which is explained in our Emergency Framework Regulation. And the Health Crisis Board will be made of the Commission and Member States representatives, but every other relevant key partners will also have to be involved in this. So this will be the kind of the core tool for our coordination role, which is one of the big role of HERA, to make sure there's a coordinated EU level response for future health crises. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So I just wanted to cover very briefly again as also our budget. So HERA was set up after the multi-financial framework was agreed. So our budget is already is kind of used through existing instruments. So we have 6 billion euros available between 2022 and 2027, and they are split among three key existing European tools. So the EU for Health programme, which makes the bulk of our funding, Horizon Europe to support research and innovation, and then the UCPM and rescEU programmes, where you'll see mostly actions around stockpiling. And then in terms of crisis, we would very likely depend on the emergency support instrument to bring additional funds. If we can go please to the next slide. So, and then I think now what's maybe more operational, let's say. So HERA develops a work plan every year, which sets out our priorities for the coming years. So our work plan 2023 was published, I believe, at the end of last year, and it's available online for anyone to see. So our 2023 priorities includes the one on the slide. So we are developing our IT system, which will be an IT system that will support a number of activities, from data collection to threat detection, but also supply chains, mapping, and there's also going to be a stockpiling element to it, stockpiling management. We are also obviously further developing medical countermeasures. So this will include some calls under the EU for Health program to enter Horizon Europe to support development of new countermeasures and make sure some are available. We also focus a lot on reserving capacity for manufacturing of vaccines. So we have this call, this was launched last year, we called EU Fab, which will secure capacity through different technology platforms so that in case of crisis, Europe can activate this mechanism and have vaccines produced quickly. We also have a new financing mechanism that we are setting up with the European Investment Bank that we refer to as HERA Invest, which will be a top-up of the InvestEU to support further innovation and, where relevant, production as well capacity. So I'd say watch this space for more information on this. We are also working on a strategy for EU-level stockpiling. And then another thing that we've been working on as well is our HERA laboratory network, which is going to be called Durable. And I'm very pleased to report that it was officially made operational on the 1st of February. So that's something that's already hit the ground. And maybe the next slide. So this is my final slide. I'm just leaving this for people, again, to look in your own time, but you'll find here a link to our website where there's more information about what we do and our governance boards. You also have a link here to the HERA work plan, and finally a contact point if you want to get in touch with us. I hope I've respected my time. Thank you very much.
You have indeed. Thank you very much, Elodie, for those. And we will be able to share those links in the chat for anyone who didn't get a chance to quickly write them down there. So thank you very much, Elodie. We will turn now to a colleague from the European Commission from DG Santi. Chiara Orlandi is Policy Officer in charge of medical devices. Chiara, let's hear from you. Give us your perspective. I know Elodie has set out the broader area, but I'd be interested to hear the details from your side.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. Actually, I've been invited to talk about policies and initiative in the area of medical devices. And my name is Chiara Orlandi, and I work in DG Sante Unit D3, which is dealing with the policy in the medical devices area. Medical devices are included in the medical countermeasures that are indeed in the scope of HERA. So I guess we will just look at part of what was also already mentioned by Elodie. So I've been asked to focus on main concerns and what is happening currently in the area and what the Commission is doing. And clearly, the Commission is not acting alone in this area, like in all of the other, but together with the member states and with the involvement of all the key stakeholders. But let's start with a very few words about the regulatory framework, and you can go to the next slide, please. Thanks. Which is currently moving from the regime to the directive to the new regulations, which set a higher level of safety and are clearly increasing the bar for the level of requirements. to be met. And in this respect, we have the two regulations for medical devices are already fully applicable. The one on medical devices since May 2021, and the one on in vitro diagnostics medical devices since last year, since May 2022. I will focus especially on the medical devices side, so on the regulation 2017/745, which is the one that is raising the main concerns currently. And as both the regulations set specific transitional provisions in order to allow legacy devices, which are those devices that used to be placed on the market and to make available to patients already under the directive. They will allow those devices to be continue to be used and available to patients during a set transitional period. Given the current challenges that we are facing, the Commission put forward a Commission proposal for a targeted amendment of those transitional provisions. And the proposal was adopted on 6th January this year, following a strong call that we received from the member states, but also from all stakeholders in the area. And the proposal is currently in the procedure for co-decision, which is following on really an accelerated procedure, and we hope this will be adopted shortly. We can go to the next slide to main look at what are the main concerns, what are the reasons behind the need for this amendment of the proposal for amendment of the transitional provisions. Main reason behind was for sure the need to avoid any risk of shortages of essential medical devices, which was a clear threat due to the expiring certificate under the directive that would have reflect the inability to use the relative devices, and then making that not available to the patient. So this was the main reason that was mainly linked to the overall limited or mainly still insufficient capacity of notified bodies, which are those third bodies that are tasked to certify those devices. Without the certification of the devices by the notified bodies, the devices cannot be placed on the market and used. So we detected that the capacity of the notified bodies was still insufficient to cover the huge amount of devices that needed to transfer to the new regulation. And also a still low, let's say, preparedness of manufacturers in that respect, because we also detected a very low number of manufacturer applications for certification to notified bodies. The slides report also some numbers that are coming from the most recent survey performed by the Commission in that respect, and were really the basis that actually brought to the several initiatives that we are working on, including also the legislative one for the proposal to the amendment of the regulation. Next slide, please. And what we are doing to face the current challenge, as I said, we are in the middle of several initiatives. Some are for the short terms, but also we are looking at solutions that could address the challenge in a more systematic way and address the long term. So the first one that we put in the list is the legislative proposal that I already mentioned. But in parallel to that, we have several non-legislative measures we are working on. The MDCG, which is the Committee of Member States, which is chaired by the Commission, that is tasked to coordinate the implementation of the regulation, put forward a position paper with 19 essential actions that we are working on that are mainly addressing the need to increase capacity of notified bodies and ensure the proper preparedness of manufacturers in that respect. We also work on bridging measures to cover those devices that are going to expire before being able to benefit from the extended transitional provision proposed in the Commission proposal for the amendment of the MDR, which is mainly making use of the tool given by the regulation from Article 97. We are also gaining momentum to increase the number of notified bodies and speed up the designation of those new notified bodies that will come to assist the certification of medical devices. We are continuously monitoring the availability of medical devices, and to do that, we survey and we involve all key stakeholders, and I'm talking about the member states, but especially manufacturers and notified bodies in that respect, which have a real idea, concrete feedback on what is happening on the ground. And we are also launching a number of activities under the EU for Health program 2022, but also 2023, which will aim at increasing the capacity of notified bodies and increases preparedness of manufacturers. But there are also several other projects that I listed in that slide, which will include also the possibility of having scientific advices for the clinical development of medical devices for the higher risk devices. In that respect, in order to reach out SMEs, which are the main part of the medical devices industry, we are also making use of the Enterprise Europe network, and this is something that we will also link with the several activities that we are putting forward under the EU for Health programs. And last word, I want to mention the tailored solution that we are working on orphan devices, which are particularly critical given the rare disease that they address and the small amount of patients, but critical patients that they address in that respect. And this is something that we are looking also on as a matter of priorities together with the MDCG and involving also the clinical societies in that respect. With that, I conclude. Thank you very much. I just listed the number of actions that are ongoing, and I'm available to provide more information if needed. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chiara. We appreciate both yourself and Elodie joining us this morning and staying around while we move on into our debate. So once again, a reminder to all the attendees, I know there's many of you, that you can get involved in the discussion, either using the Q&A function, the chat function, or raise your hand and we will promote you to panelists so you can ask your questions via video and sound. Our panel today is made up of Max Pullman, who is Project and Cluster Manager at BioM Biotech Cluster Development. Michael Kirschbaumer is Project Manager of Innovation at FGG, that is the Steirische Wirtschaftsführungsgesellschaft. I hope I have pronounced that okay. I have terrible German. And Monza Davan, Director of Science Policy and Internationalization at BioCat. Thank you all very much for joining us. Michael, let me add as well, I know that, of course, you're representing the Enterprise Europe network there that Chiara just mentioned. So I'm going to come back to you on that as well. But first of all, Max, let me start with you. Give us your assessment of how successful HERA is within the agenda that it's set for itself.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure. So HERA is a very new entity, and I guess there's a lot of ground to cover still, and that needs to be established. I can probably best provide a little view of what I realize is going on here in Germany, for example, where I have the feeling that a lot of the framework needs to be set to make HERA a successful endeavor, basically. So we need to do our homework ourselves here and make it possible to have, I don't know, a higher production capacity here, to have the development and the availability of drugs and medicinal devices and stuff like that we have that here. And I have the feeling that there's a lot of things that need to be done to actually, get this started right and in a correct way, so we can actually have an effective and efficient response to any health threats that might be there in the future. So I have the feeling there's a lot of debate and talks and preparation, preparing to do, basically, for legal entities here, for companies here, for clusters like us. We always try to bridge, basically, the gap between industry and politics and all the members that we have in our clusters. And I have the feeling there's a lot of talking that is necessary, basically, because companies don't work for free. They need to earn money. So the legal framework needs to basically reflect and empower them to earn money, but then also develop innovative, good medicines in the future. So I think there's a lot going on. I have the feeling that especially in the political area, there is a lot of movement there. Politicians have realized that we need to be active there, and we need to activate our strengths, basically, to develop our drugs ourselves, for example. And I'm hopeful that we will get there, but I feel like there's a lot of work to do still.
Michael, a similar sort of question to you. What's your perspective? I mean, do you agree with what Max is saying? Are you finding similar issues?
I'm dealing with a completely different kind of client base than Max is. We are in the Enterprise Europe network. We are very much focused on small and medium-sized enterprises, especially also startups, and they are facing different challenges. You're talking about political development, and I have not seen that actually reaching the ground, meaning really reaching the SMEs. We see that there is a high density of really highly innovative SMEs in the health tech sector that are trying to get to the market, startups, but there are limited instruments for them to actually scale up. Just one example, if you look at the EIC Accelerator, the European Innovation Council Accelerator, almost half of the companies applying for funding there are health tech companies. And with a success rate of 5 to 7%, you can imagine how many of these really good ideas actually make it into this program. And there's so much more there. But that's in reality the only possibility for these highly innovative solutions from these SMEs from all over Europe to actually reach market readiness. We're talking here about bridging this innovation valley of death. And if we don't find solutions for all these great ideas that actually get to the market, we will still remain in these old structures of devices and solutions, and these new ideas that actually can solve a lot of problems that we've been hearing about today will never reach the markets. We have a huge problem there of a backlog of ideas that due to the market situation, due to the fact that there is hardly any venture capital available in Europe, and venture capitalists always look for like fast growing companies, but you all know in the health tech sector, it takes 5 in the medical device up to 20, 15 when you look at biotech companies to actually reach market readiness. And we don't have investors that are as patient. So I mean, there are huge issues. I mean, huge issues that we need to deal with. But I mean, it gives me hope that I see every day new companies popping up and coming to my office or other offices in the Enterprise Europe Network, presenting brilliant new ideas.
Well, Michael, just before I move to Monza, I mean, market readiness in the medical sector is not the same as market readiness in other sectors. It's not like putting out a new mobile phone. We're talking about medicines, lives, and medical devices that could have major impact on people, whether they live or die. So, I mean, surely you're not saying that all these checks and balances and regulations are unnecessary and hampering.
No. I didn't say that. I hope it didn't come across. They are absolutely necessary. But what's also necessary is that there is a support system for these new ideas to actually get them to the market. And what's there is, it's good for, if you want to create an app or a new machinery, then the support measures, I think, are good enough. Like, look at I'm just taking the EIC as an example because that's this one measure, this one European measure of bringing new ideas to the market, making it market ready. I mean, this is the vision, and that works for most industries, from energy to machinery to food, but it actually doesn't work for health tech as much because they're looking at projects 3 years, 4 years max. That's not enough to bring a medical device onto the market. I mean, at least a drug on the market takes much longer. So so these companies, in the middle of the development, in the middle of the way to the market, suddenly there's no more funding. Of course, we can't all rely on funding. I mean, this is clear. We're talking about market, so you can't always fund everything. But I don't really see initiatives out there that pick up where the EIC leaves the companies and actually gets them to the market. But I think Monse will have to say a lot about that too, right?
Yeah, Monse, over to you.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't want to come.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Michael, because I had a bunch of lines prepared, but I have to react to many of the things that I have been said today. So this is the good thing about it, and also reacting or answering to some questions I see in the chat, and also Anais, hi, and thank you for asking that as well. So probably it's not going to be really in order, but I first want to answer to Jennifer's question about HERA. For us, HERA means what the Commission has put in place as a transition pathway for the health system. So that we have to keep in mind. Health industrial ecosystem is particular, is not like the other ones, like you mentioned that. And the transition pathway tools are under HERA. And for us, HERA is, and we are part of this through the Joint Industrial Cooperation Forum, which is intended to connect to industrial players. So we are happy to be there also. But let's not forget that actually it's about alerts on cross-border threats. That's it. That's another thing. It's about coordination. And that's one of the big changes that have come after COVID. So if 2008 economic crisis was brought some coordination, more coordination at EU level on economic aspects, COVID has brought more coordination on research, on innovation, but also on preparedness, stockpiling. And this is also what's about with HERA. And being part of that as an advisory body, it's also important for cluster organizations like ours. And then the third thing is transformation through the innovation proposals that come from HERA, transformation of the system. And we've seen that transformation of the industry. And then, for example, I see Michael was referring to the particularities of the sector. But let's also recall that under health industries, we have biotech, we have pharma, but we have medtech, and we have also digital health. That is one of the big changes that we've seen after COVID, also the growth of digital health. And that's also relevant for us. So again, my perspective is different from that of my colleagues, Michael and Max, because I represent a regional ecosystem as a whole. It involves hospitals, research organizations, also universities, but smart startups and scale-ups, etc., and a little bit of larger industries. So for us, the best tools to support is when we, as cluster organizations, ask our stakeholders what they need from us to better, to grow or to scale up. And answering also the chat is funding. They need money, of course. They need support to reach markets, own markets and foreign markets. So support and then talent, definitely talent, and focusing also on the new talent and helping also them to go from the business as usual, with the challenges of business as usual, to the challenges that we are facing with the crisis, with the climate crisis, with the necessary impact on people, and with the necessary transition to sustainable and digital business models. And that's what cluster are also working on. And also, for example, and I just mentioned now Chiara, supporting them in reaching out and requiring also a delayed transition on the MDR, for example, which probably is going to be voted next week at the Parliament. So these kinds of things are what are changing probably the whole landscape of the industry. HERA is a part of that. We are part of HERA, and this is stockpiling, this preparedness, this is crucial for us. I don't know if I have to stop here because there's many more things on the questions, but I guess I was trying to answer a little bit of your question and my colleagues' questions.
Thank you, Montse. I know it's we're covering a lot of ground, so we're kind of possibly bouncing around between topics. Michael, you have your hand raised. I'm guessing you have something to respond to.
Yes, I do. I mean, we need to talk about the gatekeepers of the health system here, and especially for the SMEs who are trying to enter the market. I mean, we have two main gatekeepers that I feel are still a little bit reluctant when it comes to embrace innovation in the healthcare industry. There's on the one hand the users in the hospitals, and I'm not really talking about the doctors. I'm talking about the administration in the hospitals that are very reluctant to rely on new technologies. And on the other side, this whole reimbursement of the public health insurance system. I mean, these things need to go hand in hand in order for new technologies, new ideas entering the market. And there's one third issue that I'm seeing here, and that's something that could actually be done on a European level, like an initiative for innovative procurement in the health tech area, to take out the risks for the single procurers when they want to go into a new, not already widespread technology. So I mean, there are different ways we could leverage this system, but nothing that from the Enterprise Europe network can't do. I mean, what we do in the Enterprise Europe network is we do events like I just posted here in the chat, where we bring together stakeholders from all the different levels and try to get them to talk to each other. That's what we can do. We can support our companies on the way to funding, to investment, also to get together with big corporates to make their first sales. But these systemic changes need to come from policy, need to come from the Commission, need to be discussed with in this cluster collaboration platform, prepared here probably. But I mean, I'm still hopeful. I know there is so much innovation on the ground, and it just needs to be led through into the system, and then we would have a completely different situation.
Thank you, Max. We're covering a lot of ground here. I mean, you've got a unique perspective. Tell me what your thoughts are.
I just wanted to respond anyways, because I think, what Michael said is absolutely true, and I completely agree that we do have so many good ideas. We have a lot of innovations that are ready basically to be translated into a state basically where they can help, right? And we're at this point where we sometimes struggle to bring companies to a point where they can actually apply these great ideas that they have. So I don't know, I've been in many meetings between companies and hospitals, for example, where there was talk about how to best conduct clinical trials, how to get their drugs basically, or their innovative therapeutics into the clinic. And it was so difficult to actually reach a point where everybody agreed and it was actually done. So I feel like the translation is one of the big points that we have to, or the big problems that we have to solve. So to become quicker there, to become leaner in a way. So I feel like a lot of companies are struggling with the bureaucracy around getting their drugs to market, and then once they hit a point where they can actually try to get into a clinical stage trial, the problems for a lot of smaller companies just start because they need a lot of money to actually go on. The framework is very difficult, very complicated for them. So we're just trying our best to not lose any good ideas on the way to a market access. And I think, this is a point where we can improve a lot. And also when it comes to, for example, sharing data and health data, that is another point that is very high on our agenda, because a lot of the companies would benefit massively from availability of health data. And that is a point where, I don't know if it's a German problem. I guess it's not a unique German problem, but we are probably very thorough and strict, especially when it comes to data protection and stuff like that. So it is hard. A lot of data is there that could be used for smaller, especially for smaller companies that can't afford like a huge data analysis group or anything like that. And we're just at the moment, we're just at this point where we have to figure out better ways to get access to this and to get our small SMEs and our very innovative companies into a position where they can actually make use of all these resources that we have available, and then push on and bring their good ideas to the market, actually.
Montse, you are going to add.
Yeah, I guess that we might have different visions, but it's not, I mean, it's different perspectives of the same situation, because we are also positioned in different places in the whole value chain, let's say. So I think it's interesting to having this discussion at that point. Good ideas need to fill a market need. So, or we need to find the market need that is good for our ideas. Otherwise, those are, I mean, interesting technologies, but probably not all are good ideas. And that's something that entrepreneurs and companies and in general, the industry needs to keep in mind. So, of course, those new technologies need to reach the market because there are many needs there, and some of them are unmet or even undetected. So that's good to have all these systems thinking that we put all the players and not forget the patients, not forget the society, not forget those users that have to be there also to identify what is needed, also from the gatekeeper's perspective. Of course, we are all facing the problem of the slow path of innovations reaching the market. And that's why many different, regulations, countries and cluster organizations and ecosystem players are working on putting in place fast tracks for those innovations that really have to access fast the market. That are, in Germany you have good examples, but this is not the only one. And luckily there are many other examples that are ongoing. We are also trying to have one in our region in Catalonia. Biocat is working actually on that, taking ideas from everywhere. And for the gatekeepers' perspective, you say they are, reluctant, or the base. Of course, this is a key aspect to face. Upskilling and reskilling is key for everybody in the industry and from both sides of the adoption of this innovation. Flexible financing systems or mechanisms for health systems, going to from buying masks to buying technology. It's not something that happens from one day to the other. So a strong reflection on how this is financed, and also the reimbursement processes are important. But then also there's something we're not always talking about, which is evidence. There are many technologies, but we have to provide evidences for those technologies, that those technologies are really going to solve a need, or are going to be once in the market providing what they expect to be providing. And then you mentioned that, Max, health data. So this is the big issue, and I mean, luckily we have also some, the Commission pushing on some directions, like, for example, the European Health Data Space, or these kind of things. What we can do as cluster organizations, and I'm just very quickly, because I don't know if I have the occasion to say that after, it's working on the direction for with of course, the DGs. We have DG Sante here, but with DG Grow, DG Research, all the different transversal policies that are being put in place are important for us to translate that into action, calls for action to the ecosystem. For example, working with the new European Innovation Agenda for, addressing the flagships and helping SMEs scale up, that has been said. Reflecting with other cluster organizations, working in a platform mode, working with an ecosystem networks. And as Vice President of the Council of European Bioregion, I'm happy to say that we do that with other bioregions in Europe. And this kind of things, this dialogue is necessary also to change the mind of the gatekeepers of the health system. So I think we can contribute somehow at that level, and I'm happy to share that with you as well.
Well, thank you. But of course, there are some initiatives already in place to foster innovation. Chiara, I think you are well placed to tell us about one or two of those.
Yes, thank you very much. It was it's an extremely interesting discussion, and innovation is one of the key aspects that we are clearly looking at, and we do want to foster innovation. We do not want to lose innovation in the EU, especially because of the transit to the new regulation, which should actually provide a better system, a better outcome for patients, healthcare, and industry as well. So we are really look at this challenge, and among the actions that I briefly listed, we also have a study that we are about to launch, which is addressing governance, but not only on governance, also innovation in the medical devices sector, because this is really something that we want to look at for sure from our perspective. So the policymaker, we are not going to address elements like reimbursement or procurement, but what matters, the last panelist was mentioning, so the access to market. This is something that we absolutely want to guarantee to innovative technologies. They have to be able to reach the market, and this has to be done in reasonable time, because we have seen that the timing for certification of medical devices, especially high risk devices with new technologies, can really take long. It means up to on average 18 months, but up to 2 years. Because they also need the evidence that was mentioned. The evidence is what proves that the device is performance, that clear. In that respect, also for to assist the manufacturer in that respect, and here when we talk about innovation, we in new technologies, we especially have in mind the SMEs. There is another initiative that we are starting about. to launch, which is the use of the expert panels. The expert panels to which manufacturers will be able to refer in order to assist them for the clinical strategy, which is indeed which is what is needed for them to be able to provide the evidence that their devices is performant. So this is an additional assistance that we want to provide, and we are really about to start also with these measures. So all the interventions were extremely interesting to me, and I'm glad to see that what we are about to put forward as I mentioned, the quite longer term solutions are going into that directions. Thanks.
Thank you, Chiara. Thank you very much for that. Michael, let me come back to you.
Yeah, Max mentioned data. Monster did too, and I think there's one, and this is especially. I mean, I see out there. I've talked to a couple of companies. There are a lot of KI applications now in stage of development when it comes to diagnostics, right? So what these KIs need are vast amounts of data. With diagnostics attached to it. For these companies, it's impossible to get the data. They have to produce the data themselves with clinical trials, although they are there in hospitals. So, I mean, what would really help to push KI in Europe, in the healthcare sector, especially for diagnostics, would be some kind of open data approach, of course, anonymized, so that these companies can train their KIs and then perform, as Chiara said. Of course, you need performance there, and you need to prove performance. But in order to prove performance, you need to have these good KIs trained. And yeah, I know in my area there are 3 companies urgently looking for access to data to train their KIs for diagnostic purposes, and they don't get it. Hospitals are reluctant, and the data, they always say, okay, no, that data is protected, although it's already anonymized. So an initiative like that from the Commission would really go a long way of pushing. I mean, we all know KI is one of these things where we could actually beat the other regions in the world if we would just have a little bit more freedom for our companies to train their KIs and get them out on the market. That's all I wanted to say about it.
Well, thank you, Montserrat. Give us your anything to add.
Very quickly to Michael's comment, and totally agree. That's why the European Health Data Space framework, which is not regulation, which is not something mandatory, of course, is expected to be incentivizing the different countries, because at the end of the day, this is member state level, and also the infrastructures that you need for that, and also the regulations that you need for that are member state level. But there's also the Digital Europe perspective that is going to support that transition to this, and also reducing the divide between different countries when facing those problems. So that's, I mean, actually we're working with with the different presidencies at the EU Council to bring this into the priorities of the agenda to discuss this, because this is really one of the key aspects. There are countries in which patients simply have to opt out because they have already their data shared to primary use and then secondary use for research. The cross-border primary use, the secondary use for research or for the industry are the things that this European Health Data Space is going to face. The use and misuse, the governance of the data, this is very complicated and has to be faced with keeping in mind that this is very sensitive subjects. So, but definitely these policies that are already there are kind of pushing the different countries to adopt something. And these opportunities to keep the dialogue open at all levels with all stakeholders, quadruple helix, and politicians, policymakers. Please don't stop doing this, because this is really important. Sometimes you have an agreement with a hospital, you can work with some data, but this has to be systematic, it has to be inclusive, and this has to be equitative. So I think this is the right framework. We only need to be able to advance on that direction.
Thank you, Montse. And there's a couple of things to say about data, and one of them worth mentioning is, of course, sample size. Anonymization is more useful the bigger the size sample. And likewise, the actual functionality of the data is probably more useful. And that's why we're talking about a European health data space. Max, what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, thank you. I think there's a lot of work to do in the way of communication, or basically communicating this idea to the public. And that is where I see one of our problems at the moment, is that, I don't know, I've heard the sentence like, it's enough if my doctor knows what illness I have. And I feel like this is a very common perspective from somebody who is just, I don't know, in a way different field, going to the doctor every once in a while, and then he tells them, well, you have this condition, you have this illness. But they never think about like the next steps, like who is going to develop a drug, who's going to develop a device that will help you address this issue. And I think that is something where we can also, as clusters, for example, be active and try to communicate this case, and try to make sure that everybody understands what it means to share your data, what it means to have health data available to industry partners, to companies, to SMEs. I think also it means that there is less division between the sizes of the companies. I mean, a big pharma company that is acting worldwide can buy data or can use data that are generated in a different part of the world that might not be 100% applicable to the population that is, for example, here in Europe. So it would be important to have a European population that is basically generating this kind of health data. And I think these are all points that we need to communicate in a very open and very positive way. So, and we have to, be careful to also not just overthrow everything and go above the heads of the population, basically, of the people who are generating this data, basically. So I think it's a very sensitive topic, but a very important one. And we were talking a lot about how health data actually might be a factor that determines whether companies come to a specific place in the world or not. And I think that is something that we want to avoid in Europe, that companies leave Europe or not, but don't come to Europe in the first place just because there's no data available here. And I think that is something that we need to be sensitive about, but we need to push on at the same time very diligently and very focused. And I think the idea that there's a shared European space where data is available is a good idea, but we have to be careful that we do it right. And we have to be careful that we are quick enough so not every country, not every region is just at some point creating their own little solution that doesn't fit into the whole framework. So if we want a European solution, we need to do it in the right way. And I think that is a whole topic on its own, but a very important one in my opinion.
Absolutely. And indeed, of course, one of the things we talk about is the potentiality of a data donor card where people can altruistically set their parameters of comfort for what data they're prepared to share about, whether it's a personal condition or whether it's just personal data, in order to solve some of these problems. Now, I do see a lot of conversation happening in the chat here. So people making comments about the Pact for Skills and so on. So I do want to open the floor and really encourage any of our attendees who might have questions or thoughts, just use the raise hand function. We will be able to put you on screen to ask a question. Or, I mean, alternatively, if you're feeling a little shy at this hour on a Wednesday morning, do use that Q&A function or the chat function. I can see here someone's asking, what about the EU insurance to help poor people or immigrant people access private care? I don't know if any of our panelists have strong feelings on that they want to add. everyone's not really wanting to get into the details of that. Possibly not one for today. Well, have we any questions? I'm going to really see if our attendees.
Sorry, really a quick reaction to that.
Yeah.
Because there are countries. I mean, in Spain, it happens it's universal care for all people. That's how we work. And of course, the question addressed about insurances, but our coverage is universal, and I think it's also a good model to work at that level. But yeah, I'm not further than that.
Max?
I mean, I'm also not an expert in this field, and it's just, I realize there's, at the moment here, there's a lot of, or in Germany, I don't want to talk about this too much, but there's a lot of debate about the ways that our new legal framework basically tries to make it cheaper for health insurance providers basically to buy medicines or drugs, and this is causing a lot of stir up within the industry, basically, because a lot of companies that produce and develop medicines and drugs are now saying that if they're not getting any value out of that product, they're not going to launch it in a country where they basically can't sell it for a profit. So that is a perspective for Germany, but yeah, I think these are things that we need to that are very delicate and very difficult to deal with. If you try to deal with the pricings too much, we just need to make sure that we're not biting ourselves in the tail in the end, and then medicines are not available here because they're not profitable. Basically, it's just a very quick take. I don't have any better knowledge on the European level, so I don't want to overstate that too much.
We've come at it sideways a little bit and from different perspectives, but I think some of what we're trying to deal with here is, well, if you like, the gap between competencies, between member state competencies and what EU can structurally do, because health is, of course, member state competency, which does, to some degree, tie the hands of what can be achieved at EU level. Michael, would you agree with that, or do you have a more nuanced perspective?
I can agree with that. And I mean, what Marx just said, we have the same problem in Austria. And still, I mean, drugs are even cheaper in Austria than they are in Germany. So this is why we have a drug shortage in Austria at the moment, because companies buy big amounts of drugs very cheap and then sell them in Germany for a little bit more money. So, I mean, there is, and I mean, if you look at this system, it's like speculation with health. Because of price difference. I mean, and it's kind of scary. I mean, I'm not against the market, don't get me wrong, but if markets, especially in a sensitive area like that, are treated so differently in the different countries, then we really can't talk about the European health system or a European health approach, because everybody tries to be first and tries to be cheapest. I think that's not the way. That's not the way to go, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, people who know me know that I'm very European minded, and I wouldn't mind the European Union to have more say in all these critical things. I think it would get us much further than all these nationalism arguments from our wonderful politicians that try to save more their seats than really what's good for the people. But I mean, that's a completely different discussion. But in the end, that's the problem.
Okay, well, I think we're reaching the sort of end of what we've discussed. I mean, a couple of last points that I've been noting down as we've been going through that we haven't really delved into. One was this Pact for Skills. We touched on it. I know it came up. Dominique Delaporte mentioned it in the chat. You can't have innovation without skills, so that is obviously, this year apparently is the year of skills for the EU. So that's something worth talking about if you're talking about shortages. Something else that occurred to me is we're talking a lot about innovation to deal with chronic or ongoing situations without really delving into some of the emergency situations. We mentioned, of course, COVID was the Kickstarter, as it were, for HERA. We mentioned the war in Ukraine, but we cannot, I think, ignore what happened in recent days in Turkey and Syria, and organisations from across the EU, both at member state level, the civil protection mechanism, have kicked into force to try and help there. Montserrat, you want to add?
I just want to give 3 hashtags: innovate, produce, and adopt. Those are the lagging aspects in Europe, and for our competitiveness, this is important. But just to add to what you say.
Well, thank you. I think we are going to wrap it up. So, Michael, do you have 3 hashtags or 3 words or 3 thoughts you would like to leave us with?
I would leave out the first, innovate, because we're good at innovating. We're good at invention. It's just the second one, the second and third one. Actually, bring it to the market. I mean, this is why we have this Horizon Result platform, for example. Lots of research, lots of money into research, and then they are there, lying around in drawers at universities, ready to be picked up. So actually, bring to the market, get it out there. This is in all areas, not only health area. That's the big issue that we have to deal with. In our, I mean, you just mentioned the earthquake and the thing. I mean, we are in a luxury situation, and we're actually, compared to that, talking about luxury problems, first world problems, as they say. But in the end, if we want to be competitive, then we need to get our research results and our innovations onto the market and bring those people who still don't see the benefits of that onto our side, and convince them that it actually makes sense to be faster on the market.
And finally, Max, double-edged sword going last. Finally, give us your thoughts.
No, I think in my opinion, one of the big things now is that, I mean, in the past, I don't know, decades, basically globalization has been the big thing. Not, I don't want to say the issue. It's the big thing, and now we've seen, in the face of many crises, we've seen that it makes us vulnerable in some parts. And I just want to make clear that in my opinion, it's not a good idea to now go back to like full, we want everything just here in our country. And I think that is an important thing, that the EU remains in a position that that all the members are aware of that, and we're not getting back into this very narrow-minded national pool of everybody does their own thing, and we're not sharing anything. I think sharing knowledge, sharing technologies, sharing drugs, or sharing products in general is our biggest strength, and the only way that we stay competitive in a global setting, basically. So yeah, I'm very keen on trying to help and push into a way that, countries are not going back into their little shells, but at least in Europe we stay open and ensure this exchange keeps on going. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity here to talk to other countries, and that's something that we really appreciate, and really try to also keep on going in the future.
Well, exactly, and that's a little bit what this morning's discussion is about. This clusters network that we all try to collaborate, and that's one of the absolute key words. So thank you very much indeed to our 3 panelists, and to all the attendees, even if you are a little bit shy with your questions this morning. I'm going to hand the floor over now, as always, back to Nina Hopman to give us an outline of the funding opportunities that are coming up. I know many of you are interested in these, and keep an eye on the chat where you'll see links as well. So Nina, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you also to all the panelists and attendees. I think it was a very useful discussion and very interesting to follow. Regarding funding opportunities that we wanted to share with you, there is an open call for environmentally sustainable and climate neutral health and care systems. So topic of green transition, that is of course always present. So this call is so that policy decision makers, providers of health and care, the workers and the citizens have increased knowledge on where today not really environmentally be sustainable and where improvements are going to be needed, so that they have access to innovative solutions. Plus, there's an action on the monitoring, reporting of carbon emissions and pollutions, how to mainstream it through a life cycle approach. The call is open until the 13th of April. It's a Horizon Research and Innovation Action. You have the topic ID in the screen and the link in the chat. It is published on the Funding and Tenders portal. The call is also open regarding pandemic preparedness and response, namely sustaining established coordination mechanisms for European adaptive platform trials and or cohort networks. As the title says, this is to strengthen existing strategic coordination mechanism and to describe the perfect coordination mechanism to enhance our collaboration here. It's a Horizon coordination and support action, topic ID in the screen and the link in the chat. Another call we would like to draw your attention to is maintaining access to regular health and care services in case of cross-border emergencies. We touched about that as well. There's a list of possible actions that should be addressed under this topic. For example, access to modeling tools and foresight studies to better facilitate and manage access to regular health and care delivery during those emergencies, access to training, to advanced digital tools, as well as the co-design and co-production of delivery models. This is a call also open until the 13th of April under the Horizon Research and Innovation Action, topic ID in the screen and link in the chat. Another call is the development of harmonization of methodologies for access to digital health technologies in Europe. So also a topic that we heard about in the panel debate. The list of potential actions that should be delivered, the methodology, framework, and standardized approaches for accessing digital health technologies, so that also regulators have robust evaluation methodologies. Furthermore, EU citizens should gain faster access to those technologies, and it should, of course, contribute to improving cross-border use and interoperationality. Deadline also 13th of April, Horizon Research and Innovation Action. Look at it and check it out by clicking in the link in the chat. And last but not least, a different call, a call from Ventures Thrive for investments in deep tech startups. So Ventures Thrive is one of the first pan-European deep tech venture builders committed to helping startups, and it's funded by the EIC of a grant of 1.5 million. It will be deployed over the next 2 years to fund 32 deep tech startups, focusing on our most urgent problems that we face. And each accepted startup is eligible for 100,000 euros in cash and services. Deadline for this is the 16th of March, and you find information under the link in the chat. And with that, I close. And back to you, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Nina, as always. And speaking of dates, we have some dates for your diary. Of course, these clusters talks are bi-weekly sessions for the clusters community to stay up to date on all the policies, the initiatives, the news, and as you just heard, the funding opportunities. So on 22nd of February, there will be the transition pathway for mobility. 8th of March, we'll be looking at Euro clusters. 22nd of March, we will be talking about interregional collaboration. And on 5th of April, raw materials and the circular economy. So if you're interested in any or all of those, please don't forget to sign up. And of course, you can follow us online, following the hashtag EU Clusters Talks. And remember, as always, register on the European Cluster Collaboration Platform if you haven't already. And the links are all there in the chat. This session has been recorded. You'll be able to see it online in due course. But I thank you all very much for your input from our great speakers, our great organisers, and you, the attendees. Have a wonderful Wednesday, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.